Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and this is episode 1 of my month with, where I spent some time with Mr Ira Levin. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, so this is the first episode then of My Month With, a project that will hopefully help me get to know some more work by some authors that I've only read a little bit of in the past, maybe one or two things, but I want to explore their work further. So in January I spent the month with a couple of books by Mr Ira Levin. I read Rosemary's Baby in April 2023. Loved that. That was a 5-star read for me. And I immediately put loads more Ira Levin on my to-read list. So I've read 2 more this month. I've picked The Stepford Wives and The Boys from Brazil. So let's start then with The Stepford Wives. This one. This is from 1972. And in this then we meet Joanna Eberhardt and her husband Walter and her 2 rambunctious kids as they move to the seemingly idyllic suburban neighbourhood of Stepford in Connecticut. Joanna is a progressive woman of the 1970s, active in the women's liberation movement, independent, forward-thinking, and her husband Walter is seemingly of a similar mind. But as she settles into these new surroundings and meets some of the other women, the other wives of the neighbourhood, the vast majority of whom appear to be extremely subordinate and kind of catering to their husband's every need. And she learns about the local men's association, which is a club exclusively for the men of the town, the activities for which are somewhat shrouded in secrecy. She starts to suspect that something dark lies beneath this idyllic facade. And as Joanna tries to find out the truth behind the town's secret, she risks becoming the next in a long line of Stepford Wives. So I think folks probably will know the plot of this already. A lot of folks will. There have been a couple of films made of it over the years, one in the 70s and one in 2004. Although the one in 2000, I haven't seen the 1970s one yet, but the 2004 one, the plot is a little bit different to the book. But I think, the book, the story, etc., it's quite a big part of popular culture for now. So I guess a lot of people know it, but I will avoid spoilers in case anybody's still in the dark about what that secret in Stepford is. So what did I make of this one then? I really enjoyed this. Although maybe not as much as I thought I might going into it. I thought it might be kind of as impactful as Rosemary's Baby was in terms of reading experience, but it wasn't quite there. It was still excellent, but it wasn't quite there. Whether that was because I already kind of knew the general plot, secret, etc., I don't know. It might well be the case. It's a very short novel, or it's a novella really. It's like 139 pages, something like that. So yeah, it's a novella. I've seen it a lot billed as horror, but I'd say that it was more of a kind of it's a satirical thriller with some horror elements in it and some sci-fi as well. I would have liked it to be a bit longer, to be honest. The characters in it are good, although they are much more kind of sketches of people, I would say, in a lot of cases, the exceptions to that being Joanna and her best friend in Stepford, another kind of strong and independent woman, Bobby, who feel far more developed, but you are seeing, there's a lot, it is Joanna's perspective, so you'd expect that. But without getting into spoiler territory, I think given the plot and theme of the novel, the lack of character development for some of the other members of the community works in the book's favour in terms of this secrecy and the sort of characters of the Stepford Wives themselves. The town itself has a lot of character, a lot of personality. It's very easy to kind of imagine the sort of American suburbia that it is really, Stepford, and the feel of the place. The atmosphere throughout It's kind of, it's got Levin's trademark sort of subtle suspense and tension within it in terms of the atmosphere, a very normal and somewhat mundane setting that feels very real world, but like with this darkness that just like kind of lurks under the surface throughout. As I say, even though I didn't enjoy this quite as much as Rosemary's Baby, Levin's writing is no less strong in this. His prose is really direct, I think, in all of his books, and it's to the point. He doesn't waste any words at all, but his writing's elegant at the same time, and it manages to hit all the right notes in terms of drama, tension, humour, that kind of thing. It's very funny in parts, this, very dry, very sarcastic. Plot-wise, it's a plot-based book, I would say, and although I personally wish it was a bit longer, it's amazing how much Levin packs in to just a short time on the page. It moves at a really steady pace, ramping up quite gradually all the time towards the reveal, and that reveal is pointed to very much so throughout the novella. If you know what's coming, it's very easy to see the seeds that are being sown by Levin as the story progresses, but it doesn't feel overly telegraphed, I think. It's where I think it's the ideas in it that where it really excels, this one, and why it's still so relevant today, and why it's become so big in kind of sort of pop culture. The commentary on sexism and feminism is excellent, and it took me back to my 20s actually, when I studied feminist theory as part of my master's degree. It's kind of I was reminded of sort of Simone de Beauvoir and Betty Friedan and liberal feminism. In fact, Friedan's referenced in the story quite significantly, and things like Laura Mulvey's work on the male gaze, amongst various other bits and pieces. So it's nice to kind of get brought back to that kind of theory. The male gaze, particularly like the men in Stepford, especially like a character like Dale Cober, who's like the creepy president of the men's association. Him particularly kind of really conveys the sort of skeezy feeling that women can get when being viewed as objects, like that feeling of being watched, a feeling of kind of vulnerability and nakedness. Like Koba stands in the doorway of Joanna's kitchen at one point, kind of watching her do something, whether it's washing up or making a drink or what have you, and says the quote, "I like to watch women doing little domestic chores," and he's just really creepy in the way that he kind of stands and watches. And there are a few instances like this throughout the book, and they're quite chilling on their own, even without the kind of the dark secret of Stepford even coming into play. I think that works really well. Stepford's a microcosm of sort of the patriarchal nature of society itself. And it's an illustration of the backlash to the women's liberation movement of the time. The men of Stepford don't want liberated women for wives. They want subservient housefraus, is the word that's used in the book. And Walter, Joanna's husband, whilst at the start he seems sort of happy with having a wife who's an equal, kind of proves to be just like all the other Stepford men in the end. When Joanna becomes determined to move away from Stepford, when she gets scared about what might happen to her, Walter pretends to consider her side of things, but actually really just tries to guilt her and tries to make her doubt her own reality. Gaslights her, basically. So yeah, the way that it kind of looks at sort of patriarchy and gender roles and gender stereotypes and how women can be made to feel by men, I think is it's really quite chilling. It's and as I say, that's some of it's even outside of the dark secret. It's just sort of general things that even still happen today, the sort of behaviours that still happen today. So yeah, really good in that respect. So yeah, definitely a highly enjoyable and thought-provoking read. Some great humour and a lot of great suspense, which I kind of expected from Levin. So the rating for this one then, I will pop up the ratings on screen briefly. So we've got 7 for character, we've got a 9 for atmosphere, setting, world, etc. We've got an 8 for writing, an 8 for plot, a 9 for ideas. Yeah, I thought the ideas were excellent in this, and then an 8 for an enjoyment factor, and that added up, divided by 6, gives us 8.17, 8.17 out of 10. So if I round that down, that will go down to an 8 out of 10. So that's a great, and that will go on Storygraph at around about I think probably a 4-star, I should think. So yeah, very good. Not quite Rosemary's Baby level for me, but still, you know, cracking, short, suspenseful read. So on to the next one then, which is The Boys from Brazil from 1976. So coming into this month, I thought that The Stepford Wives was sure to be my favourite of the two, but actually this one stole the show for me. So The Boys from Brazil is, it kind of intertwines fiction and real historical stuff, basically. So at the beginning of the book, we witness a meeting of a number of men in a Japanese restaurant in Sao Paulo, Brazil. All of these men are introduced as kind of South Americans, but we quickly find out that they are Germans. They are Nazis, mainly former SS officers. The group is led by the infamous Dr. Josef Mengele, who in reality, of course, performed some absolutely horrendous experiments on prisoners in Auschwitz, and fled Germany for, I think, South America rather, at the end of the war, to avoid being put on trial for war crimes. So in the fiction of the book, Mengele is in South America, and he is sending out a group of assassins, essentially, to kill 94 men, aged 65 or thereabouts, over a period of several years on particular dates. Why? Well, other than to fulfill the destiny of the Aryan race, as Mengele puts it, we don't know at this point. And this question forms the mystery behind the plot, certainly for the first half of the book. The meeting of these men is recorded secretly by Barry Curler, a young American student, who then tries to inform Yakov Lieberman, who is an older man, famous for hunting down Nazis in his heyday and bringing them to trial. Tries to inform Lieberman of what he's just heard on this tape that he's got. But Barry's killed before Lieberman can hear this evidence or details behind this plot. So we follow Lieberman as he tries to establish the truth about this diabolical plan, figure out the why behind this series of planned assassinations, and stop Mengele's horrendous vision coming to fruition. So this one was fantastic. It's very, very much a thriller. I was hooked with this one. It got me in straight away and kept me all the way through it. Character-wise, main characters of Lieberman and Mengele, well developed. Mengele in particular is appropriately horrendous. Absolutely crazy, really dangerously so, and with the most offensively despicable views and language, as you'd expect, basically. Lieberman, on the other hand, whilst he's aging, he's world weary, he's a bit rough around the edges, he's a very, very human and likeable character. And we switch backwards and forwards between Lieberman and Mengele in the narrative, with a couple of sections with the point of view of one of the assassins or another character, another minor character. But I felt that this switching between the two main characters worked really well. The setting for the novel kind of jumps around a bit. It's an international plot, basically, as in the assassination plots they're spread all the way around the world. And so we get various different real world settings kind of throughout. And because it jumps around a lot, none of these are developed in any great detail because of this. But again, Levin's kind of tight, descriptive style paints a picture of these places, a snapshot of them. Not just in terms of the visual setting, but also the feel of them, especially from like the individual character's perspective, especially with Lieberman. I've got a quote for that. Getting off the Frankfurt to Essen plane at the Essen-Mulheim airport, Lieberman was surprised to find he felt pretty good. Not great, no, but not rotten either, and rotten was the way he had felt the other 2 times he had set foot in the Ruhr. This was where everything had come from. The guns, the tanks, the planes, the submarines. Hitler's armoury this place had been, and its pall of smog had seemed to Lieberman in 1959 and again in 1966 like a mark, not of peacetime industry but of wartime guilt, a sun-blocking shroud laid down from above rather than raised up from below. Going into it, he had felt depressed and disheartened, reached for by the past. Rotten. He braced himself for the same reaction this time, but no, he felt pretty good. The smog was only smog, no different from Manchester's or Pittsburgh's, and nothing was reaching for him. So yeah, I like that really succinct way of, you know, you get an idea of what the city is like, what the place is like, but also a bit of Lieberman's past, a bit of kind of Lieberman's feelings towards things, how Lieberman's changing. So yeah, just, you know, really sort of conservative with words, I think is what Levin is like, but really kind of manages to evoke something for me. Yeah, I really like his style. It's very straightforward. It doesn't, you know, but it doesn't lack elegance because of that. I enjoy his choice of language, and how he structures his sentences. And the dialogue he writes for the characters really helps with that. It really gives a sense of who they are and what they're like. The way that their intonation comes across in how he writes the dialogue, accent, things like that. As does with his descriptive work when it comes to like the smaller actions that these characters perform, whether it's repetitive actions or whether it's, you know, kind of a particular way that they do something. That personality really comes across. So again, he's conservative with how many words he uses for things, and he's very direct. But I find his stuff really helps me imagine character, place, whatever it is. Yeah, he's a master of suspense once again here. I found this one absolutely gripping. It's another plot-led story for sure. The pacings of the reveals in this were bang on for me. The first half being much more of a mystery, which Lieberman has to solve over, you know, why these 94 men and to what end, versus the second half of the book when he knows what the plan is meant to achieve, and must now find a way to stop it. The plot that Levin constructed for this, the scenario that he's imagined, is flipping scary for sure. It feels believable enough, especially I think today, now that we know more about the science that Mengele is employing as part of this horrific plan. No spoilers, so that's all I'll say on that. I guess it could feel a bit dated in this regard in terms of the science side of things, in terms of, you know, it's old science at this point. But not so much that it doesn't feel plausible, certainly for the era in which it's set. But it's the questions and the ideas at play, once again, really, with this one that makes this stand out. It's, you know, it's questions that Levin's played with before, such as the rebirth of evil, like in Rosemary's Baby. You know, questions of nature versus nurture, identity, destiny, the discussion around you know, the kind of conditions necessary to facilitate the rise of another sort of period of darkness like the world saw under the Nazi regime, is particularly interesting and chilling, certainly when you look at you know, certain situations in the world today. And the question of morality as well, in terms of what lengths would one go to stop that potential rise of evil again, that's an important one and quite a challenging one, I think, for me. So yeah, I loved The Boys from Brazil, much more than I thought I would. I ripped through it pretty damn quickly. And so my rating for that then, again, I'll pop this up on the screen quickly. Characters was 8. The atmosphere was another 8. Writing, I've also given 8. These are all great. Plot 9 for me. I really liked the plot for this. This was excellent. Ideas are a 9 again, excellent for me, and my enjoyment of it is a 9. So that's quite a high one for me. Yeah, I really liked this. I loved this. So that brings that in at 8.5 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10. And that will go on Storygraph as a 4.5 stars. So not quite hitting the 5-star mark there. It's still not quite to the level of Rosemary's Baby for me, but it's getting very close. So yeah, so in conclusion, yeah, more Ira Levin, please. Definitely becoming one of my favourite writers for like thrilling, thought-provoking stories. I think his ability to kind of keep that constant tension going in his stories, whether it's like full-on suspense stuff, like almost action stuff, like some of the stuff in Boys from Brazil, or like a much subtler, darker undertone of tension and suspense that bleeds all the way throughout the plot, like more so in the Stepford Wives and certainly in Rosemary's Baby. It's always there, that tension, and it makes for really compelling reading. As I say, I really like his style. I like the directness of it. I like how he can get so much across, with so few words. He's very conservative in his word use. And it's just very accessible. It's a very accessible style. He's always got a great sense of humour evident in his work, I think. It's dry and sarcastic, and there can be a darkness to it as well. And he can come up with some really chilling ideas that make for some great plots, interesting reveals, twists, while at the same time sort of asking some really interesting questions about or commenting on elements of society and real life. And considering that these were written in the 70s, and Rosemary's Baby I think was a little bit earlier, the fact that they still feel very applicable in terms of their themes and stuff today, some of the commentary, things like that, still feel very relevant today. Yeah, I think he's fantastic. I think he's a fantastic writer. So yes, I will definitely be continuing on with reading more of Ira Levin's back catalogue, and I'll let you know when I get to one that I don't rate. So that'll do from me today. I will be spending February with Mr Andy Weir, reading The Martian and Artemis, or at least listening to Artemis. That will be an audiobook. So look out for that wrap up at the end of the month. Thank you very much for watching today, folks. As always, drop your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think about Ira Levin's work, if you've read any, or let me know if I've convinced you to read some if you haven't if you haven't tried any before. I'll probably be back on Sunday with my full wrap up for January, if I manage to get it filmed in time. Things were a little busy this week, so I might not get it done in time. But if it's not Sunday, then it'll be Tuesday. So I hope you'll join me for that whenever that drops. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.